Martell Holt, a man many had watched go through public highs and lows on reality TV, was suddenly facing something far more serious than fame or reputation. He was now fighting for his life. It all reportedly began with a car crash. Not a minor accident, but a serious and violent one that left behind wreckage, confusion, and many unanswered questions. Within a short time, reports started spreading online, and social media exploded with concern, rumors, and disbelief. Some people thought it wasn't real at first. Others hoped it was just misinformation. But as more details surfaced, the situation turned out to be very serious. Adding to the confusion were reports and claims circulating online about legal issues, including alleged violations of court orders connected to past domestic cases and appeals. This only increased public attention and speculation about what might happen next. But this moment wasn't just about one incident. It was part of a much longer and more complicated story. Martell's journey has always been full of ups and downs. Before the fame, he was just a man with big goals, working hard to build a future. Coming from humble beginnings, he focused on education and later entered the real estate and construction world. His goal wasn't just money, it was about building something meaningful and lasting for his family. For a time, it looked like everything was working out. His business was growing, and his personal life appeared stable from the outside. Then reality TV changed everything. Once he appeared on television, his life became public. People got to see his personality, confidence, and ambition, but also his struggles. As the cameras kept rolling, problems in his relationship became visible. Arguments, emotional moments, and accusations all played out in front of viewers. Eventually, serious allegations and infidelity claims came out, and public opinion shifted quickly. Supporters became disappointed, and criticism grew stronger. What followed was a very public and painful divorce. It wasn't quiet or private, it was emotional, messy, and heavily discussed online. At the center of it all were their children, who were caught in the middle of ongoing custody disagreements and family tension. Despite everything, Martell continued to stay in the public eye. He kept working, appearing in media, and trying to rebuild his image. Some people saw it as determination, while others saw it as damage control. Still, one thing was clear: he didn't step away from the spotlight. Over time, more legal issues and allegations added pressure to an already complicated situation. Every time things seemed to calm down, something new would surface. Through it all, Martell often emphasized that being a father remained important to him. Many people still connected with that part of his story, the idea that, despite his mistakes, he wanted to be present for his children. But then came the crash. It didn't happen slowly or with warning. It happened suddenly. Witnesses described a chaotic scene, cars moving normally one moment, and the next, everything changed. Martell's vehicle reportedly lost control and crashed violently. The impact was severe. The sound of metal and glass filled the area, and people nearby rushed to help. Emergency services were called immediately. When responders arrived, the situation was critical. He was trapped inside the vehicle and unconscious. The car was heavily damaged, making rescue difficult and time-sensitive. Firefighters worked carefully to free him, using special tools to cut through the wreckage. Paramedics monitored him closely, doing everything possible to stabilize his condition. Once he was freed, he was rushed to the hospital with sirens blaring. Doctors and emergency staff were already waiting for him. He was taken straight into emergency care, where medical teams quickly assessed serious injuries, including possible internal trauma. He was then moved to intensive care, where machines helped support his condition. Doctors told his family that the next 48 hours would be extremely critical. Outside the hospital, news spread quickly. Fans reacted with shock and concern. Social media filled with prayers, messages, and questions. Even people who had criticized him before found themselves hoping for his recovery. Friends and family gathered for support, trying to process everything happening in real time. The focus shifted away from past drama and toward one thing only: his survival. For his children and loved ones, the situation was emotionally overwhelming. Waiting for updates, hoping for good news, and dealing with uncertainty made everything even harder. This moment changed the tone completely. The public conversation shifted from criticism to concern. People were no longer focused on his past mistakes, they were focused on whether he would make it through. And that's what makes this situation so powerful. It reminds people that life can change in an instant. Fame, controversy, success, and mistakes all become secondary when someone's life is on the line. Right now, everything is uncertain. Doctors are doing their best, family is holding on to hope, and fans are waiting for updates. And if he survives this, it will not just be another chapter in his story, it will be a turning point. Because sometimes, the most important part of a person's story isn't how they fall, but whether they get back up afterward. If he makes it through this, the reality he returns to will not be the same one he left behind. Life has a way of shifting in silence, even when the world is watching. Nothing simply goes back to normal after something this serious. It reshapes people, relationships, and priorities in ways that cannot be ignored. For Martell, recovery, if it happens, would likely mean more than just physical healing. It would also mean dealing with everything that comes with reflection. Moments like this often force a person to confront choices, consequences, and the direction their life has taken. Things that once felt important can suddenly lose their weight, while things that were ignored start to matter more than ever. For his family, especially his children, the focus would shift toward stability and protection. They've already lived through public scrutiny, emotional stress, and ongoing conflict. A situation like this would only deepen the need for peace, structure, and distance from chaos. What they would likely want most is consistency and healing, not headlines. The public response, too, would not remain the same. In moments of crisis, attention is intense, but it eventually fades. When it does, what remains is the person and their choices moving forward. Supporters may continue to stand by him, while critics may still question his past. But the noise always settles eventually, leaving room for rebuilding or restarting in a quieter way. And that is where the real challenge would begin. Because surviving something like this isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of a different one. One that demands accountability, change, and patience. It's easy for people to promise transformation in moments of fear or recovery. It's much harder to live it consistently when life moves forward again. If anything, this situation highlights something bigger than just one person. It shows how quickly life can shift, how fragile circumstances really are, and how unpredictable the future can be. One moment a person is dealing with public drama, and the next, they are fighting just to stay alive. So as updates are awaited and hope remains, the only certainty is uncertainty itself. What happens next depends not just on medical outcomes, but on everything that comes after, the decisions, the mindset, and whether lessons from something this serious truly take root. And in the end, that's what will define the next chapter, not the crash itself, but what it leads to. As time moves forward, the waiting becomes heavier in its own way. Each update carries weight, because even the smallest improvement or setback changes everything for those holding on. In situations like this, silence is often the hardest part, no clear answers, just hours that feel longer than they should. Inside the hospital, the focus remains strictly medical. Doctors continue monitoring every detail, adjusting treatment, and responding to changes as they come. Recovery in critical cases is rarely linear. It can shift quickly, some moments showing progress, others bringing concern again. That uncertainty is what makes ICU situations so intense for families. Outside those walls, life keeps moving, but not for everyone in the same way. For loved ones, normal routines lose meaning. Sleep becomes difficult. Phones are checked constantly. Every notification feels like it could carry news that changes everything. Hope and fear exist side by side, constantly switching places. For the public, attention often comes in waves. At first, there is shock and emotional reaction. Then concern and discussion. Over time, things may quiet down as news stories take over the internet. But for those directly connected, the situation never fades into the background. It stays present in every thought and every decision. If recovery continues, the next phase would likely be long and challenging. Serious accidents don't end when a person leaves the hospital. Rehabilitation, both physical and emotional, takes time. Strength has to be rebuilt slowly. Normal life has to be relearned step by step. Even basic routines can feel different after trauma. And beyond the physical side, there is always the mental and emotional impact. Experiences like this can change how a person sees everything, their relationships, their choices, and even their identity. Some people come out of it with a completely different outlook on life. Others struggle to adjust to the weight of what they've been through. For Martell, assuming he recovers, the world he returns to will likely expect answers, growth, or change. But real change is not immediate. It is not something that happens overnight or under public pressure. It takes time, consistency, and accountability away from cameras and outside noise. What remains important in moments like this is perspective. Behind every headline and every viral post is a human being, a family, and a situation that is deeply personal. Public attention may surround the story, but the experience itself belongs to those living through it. As things continue to unfold, one thing is certain: the story is not finished. It is still in motion, still developing, and still uncertain. And whatever the outcome, it will leave an impact not just on one life, but on everyone who has been watching it closely. As the situation continues to develop, the uncertainty slowly turns into something heavier, waiting without answers. Each passing hour feels stretched, especially for those closest to him. In moments like this, even small updates matter, because they become the only signs of movement in an otherwise still and worrying situation. Doctors continue doing everything they can, adjusting care based on how his body responds. Critical cases often shift day by day, sometimes even hour by hour, which is why medical teams remain cautious about giving any firm predictions. Families are usually told to focus on stability rather than timelines, because recovery doesn't follow a fixed schedule. Outside the hospital, emotions keep building in different directions. Some people are still in shock, struggling to accept how quickly everything changed. Others are holding on tightly to hope, sending prayers and positive messages. And then there are those trying to make sense of it all, replaying past events and wondering how things reached this point. For his loved ones, the emotional pressure is constant. The hospital environment becomes their entire world: waiting rooms, quiet conversations, and every phone call bringing a mix of fear and hope. Time outside that space feels disconnected, as if everything else has paused. If there is improvement, even gradual, the focus will eventually shift toward recovery. But recovery is rarely simple. It takes time for strength to return, for injuries to heal properly, and for the body to adjust again to normal life. And often, the mental recovery takes even longer than the physical one. There is also the reality that life after something like this is never the same. Priorities change. Perspectives shift. People often start to reassess what truly matters and what no longer deserves their energy. It becomes less about public perception and more about personal growth and stability. For someone like Martell, who has lived much of his life in the public eye, that shift could mean stepping back from noise and focusing on rebuilding privately. But that kind of change only works if it is consistent and genuine over time, not just spoken in emotional moments. Meanwhile, the public narrative continues to move, as it always does. Attention may rise and fall, but the situation itself remains serious for those directly involved. And as more time passes, the hope is simply for stability, for answers, for healing, and for progress, no matter how slow it may be. At this point, everything still hangs in balance. Nothing is fully resolved, nothing is certain, and nothing has returned to normal. The only thing that exists right now is waiting and the hope that the next update brings something better than the last. As the days continue to pass, the situation settles into a tense kind of silence. Not silence in the sense that nothing is happening, but silence in the sense that progress is slow, careful, and closely guarded. In critical care, that's often what stability looks like: small changes that only medical teams can properly interpret, while everyone else waits for meaning behind them. For the family, this stage is emotionally exhausting. The initial shock has not disappeared, but it has transformed into something steadier and more draining. Instead of panic, there is now endurance. Instead of sudden fear, there is ongoing concern. Every update becomes something that has to be processed carefully, because even no change can carry its own emotional weight. Inside the hospital, care remains focused and precise. The goal is no longer just survival in the immediate sense.